Hi, welcome to Kelly Talks. My name is Kelly Lorraine, and I'm here to talk to you about all things spirituality. Today, I'm very fortunate to have my friend Nick with me. Nick, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Kelly. It is when I got invited to do this, it I was so excited. So I am absolutely thrilled. I'm happy to be here with you.
Amazing. Nick, you were one of the first people that I thought of because we are really similar. I am so fortunate that Nick is part of my online family. He's with us at the full moon Zooms, in the daily lives, and we just have the same sense of humor and the same energy, it feels like. Nick, what is your astrology? Now, I know your astrology, but let everybody else know because it's fascinating to me.
Sure. So I am a Sagittarian sun. My moon is in Capricorn. I am a Leo rising.
Mhm.
Uh, I have I can keep going if you want because I've got like
Whatever you want to
okay.
share, go for it.
I've got my Mercury in Sagittarius. My
Yes.
Venus is in Scorpio.
Mm-hmm.
My Mars is in Capricorn.
Yeah.
And then I have several Libra placements, Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto. I have Scorpio in Uranus. I have Sagittarius in Neptune.
I got the Scorpio and Uranus as well.
Yeah.
This is
And so like
Scorpio.
it and also Leo North Node. So it's
Me
like,
too.
yeah, so I think like the hair is kind of like the Leo, like,
100%.
you know,
100% it is. I saw that right away. I mean, you definitely have the truth seeking, the philosophy, the sense of humor of Sagittarius. Your moon in Capricorn doesn't surprise me either because that's somebody who's a hard worker, very regimented. You kind of, I would say you dot your I's, cross your T's. At the same time, that Leo rising, I can totally see it. You're right. That's very reminiscent of the hair. Your Scorpio Venus always makes me giggle because I have Mars in Scorpio. So we sort of have that Mars Venus conjunction,
yeah.
and my rising sign is your sun sign. So I think that we really do identify very similarly. Like I said, especially in our sense of humor. Now, Nick and I both studied French. In the US, you would say at college. For me, we would say in Canada and university. So both of us, French. My degree is actually in English language and literature. I started in French, so I can't say I have a degree in French, but pretty close to it at this point. So I was a French teacher for 19 years, and I know you studied it. And I just love the fact that we have those things in common. Before we got on camera, we were discussing, our love for French history and literature. I just love that we have that in common. Nick, how did you get into tarot?
Now that's very interesting. So uh as look, I'll start, I'll go way back.
Yeah.
When I was in college, uh there was a point in my life when I kind of flirted with the idea of tarot.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was fascinated by it. I bought my first deck and I tried it out. I kind of did that just for a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
then I kind of went through some kind of a spiritual change, I guess,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
it no longer aligned with my values. So what I did was at the time, I gave my tarot deck away, and I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna put this aside. Interestingly enough, many years later, and this
Mm-hmm.
is kind of like right around the time when I was sparked by my person, which I know we'll probably get into.
Yeah.
Then I started to see all of the tarot like out of the blue.
Me
My
too.
TikTok
That
was
happened
just
exactly to me too.
flooded. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
my TikTok was flooded with tarot, and
Yeah.
I'm listening to it, and my jaw is dropping because it's like you're describing my exact situation. So
Yes.
I was compelled to watch and learn and like really dive into it. And I would say right after my awake or like when I got sparked,
Yes.
or maybe like the first, I mean, it was a while, maybe like first 8 months, I watched hours upon hours of tarot talk.
Me too. Me too. Not tarot talk for me, but for me, it started on YouTube, and
Oh,
all because I had been sparked. As you know, I call it sparked because I think a lot of people use the term, twin flame journey. I'm not so much about the label. as I once was, because I've discovered for me personally that it's a self-love journey. It's the romance, you know, or relationships are the byproduct or the bonus, I always find. But it was about me finding myself. So I get sparked and I end up speaking to, I never in my life had a reading from anybody. Like I hadn't even been to a psychic. And I called up this lady who was fairly local to me, lovely, lovely mentor. She's the one that actually said, remember the triggering line that she said to me at the very beginning? I always talk about this on live. Don't book the honeymoon suite. Linda, she was amazing. Linda, I thank her every day for that line because it triggered me, but it actually helped me a lot. Side note, but you know, she once said to me, you know, Kelly, have you ever heard of twin flames? Have you ever heard? And I was like, no. And I was shocked that I'd never heard of such things because I was always into pop culture and learning. That's the Sagittarius in us. You know what I mean? Like the philosophy,
Yeah.
the spirituality, you know, the astrology learning. And I was like, no, I don't know what this is. And next thing you know, she sends me a link for a video. And then all my YouTube was flooded with tarot and twin flames and whatever. And then I started watching, and I had always been intuitive myself, but I started learning tarot. And that's how I really started to learn tarot. And then I started looking at books to see, like, I wanted to study the original meanings, and I was really focused. So I'm laughing because this seems to always be the same type of story that we encounter. So you then watched thousands of hours of tarot, and then where did that take you?
So after watching so much tarot, same thing. I started consulting books. I
Yeah.
bought like several books and kind of reading up on them, the original meaning, kind of like the history of,
Yes, me too.
you know, but because I'm fascinated by history and stuff, and I enjoy that type of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but then it really gave me an appreciation. And as I started doing it, I'm like, okay, well, let me try my own hand at this.
Right.
So I first started reading for myself, and then I, you know, very shyly, I started filming collective reads, but not a front facing camera, more like just the card layout. And
Yes.
honestly, it's conversations with you that
Mm-hmm.
made me like
Oh,
flip the
yeah.
camera
Good
and
for you.
just, yeah, try, and because I followed your lead and just like, hey, be more confident with it, and just really kind of, and I did, and I've started, you know, gaining more likes and then paid readings and
I'm so
collectives, you
proud
know.
of you.
Yeah,
I'm so proud of you. I love it. You know, I think I've told the story a few times about how funny it is that, you know, I never had a formula for how I would film my readings. I think I'm lucky the fact that I was a high school teacher, that I was used to kind of being in front of a classroom, so to speak. I never like to present in front of my peers, which I think is very natural, where we don't like to do public speaking or whatever. But, you know, when I first got on TikTok, the truth is that my very first videos, I don't even want to scroll down to the very bottom of all my videos, but they were ones where, like, I kind of did a few like on a table, you know, like I shuffled and put them on the table. um and then I started filming my face pretty quickly because I discovered that I need to connect with people. And I always tell the same story where this person in my life said to me, you know, like, damn, Kelly, your face takes up the whole screen. And I'm like, there's a reason for it, not because I want to show my face or it's for any kind of, like, you know, vanity. It's because I've always been the type of person that believed in face-to-face contact, as in it feels like we're having a conversation with each other. And so many people have reached out to me or commented on that alone, saying, I just saw your face, like, as in it felt like we were talking to each other or you were talking to me. And I always believe in the power of facial expressions and eye contact and sort of like the little nuances, you know, like people have come to know my smirks or my you know, like, or my just, and I think that that's just a way to get to know each other. So I do believe that when you can turn the camera to your face, you're sharing a lot of yourself. There's a lot of vulnerability that comes from that. So I love hearing that. How do you feel about it now, being on camera?
I actually I enjoy it a lot. I like
Mhm.
the, it takes me back because you and I share that that history of being a teacher. I mean, I was a
Yes.
teacher many moons ago, like
Yes. Yes. Yes.
when I
Yes.
first got out of college. So but it takes me back to that, um that passion and drive for education. You know,
Mhm.
I enjoyed what I did as a teacher. Unfortunately, where I was, it was difficult financially for me to still be a teacher, it was easier for me to choose a different profession and to kind of really help establish a family and a home. And that's what I decided to do. But this way, I still kind of get to connect with my roots of that teacher mindset. I get to teach, but I get to teach a different subject. I get to teach about life and coaching and a lot of things. You'll even hear me on my videos. I credit to things that I've learned in your lives and in our stuff. So I look up to you as a mentor in that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I always say that, our connections to each other are about growth and helping each other, right? I want you to do well. I want you to be successful because you're a reflection of me and I'm a reflection of you. And so that warms my heart because I do believe that, there's room for everybody in the spiritual community. There's room for everybody in any aspect of this world. I don't really believe in this competitiveness, in regards to the spiritual community or any kind of community for that matter. We all have a place. We all bring something to the table. Everybody adds value. And so that just pleases me and says that it's spreading the word. Meaning if I can help one person and that, brings you to help others, then I've done something right. And we learn from each other. I think that's the other thing about doing this professionally is that it's not just about what we know as a teacher, it's the interactions that teach us things as well, that help us do more and better in our daily practice.
Yeah, you talk about that often too, where you learn constantly from us, and I feel like I'm doing the same with my collective. Like as I try to help guide them, as you have shown and guided me, I'm getting stories and feedback from them, and it helps me to be able to better guide the next group. So
yeah, I laugh because people will say to me, Kelly, do you know that trust the process lives rent free in my brain? Or, are you in the old? Are you in the new? I mean, like I could list a million things that I say in my videos or repeat on the daily. And sometimes I cringe at myself. I'm like, Kelly, oh my gosh, do you have to say this so often? But people have said that repetitiveness has actually really helped them. Right. So, I mean, sometimes we may cringe at ourselves, but that doesn't mean the message isn't getting out there to people.
Right. And it doesn't mean that the message isn't in any way valid because if we're constantly putting that out there, there's truth to that, right? Yeah. Otherwise, we would be repeating the same thing.
Definitely. Nick, how would you define your energy?
Interesting. The first word that I would say, like for it, would kind of be like spicy energy. It's that Sagittarian fire energy.
Love it. Yes.
I have so much fire, I guess, between the Sagittarian sun, the Sagittarius in Mercury,
yes,
Sagittarius in Neptune, but then also the Leo rising and the Leo North Node. So I have a lot of fire placements, and
are you blunt? Sorry to interrupt you a second. Are you somebody who's blunt? Like, do you find because the Capricorn moon could be blunt too? There, that's all sort of.
I tend to
be how it is.
I tend to be, but I feel like my Libra placements kind of temper that because in as much as I do cut to the chase, I try to do it just a touch more diplomatically. But really? if I can't get my point across diplomatically, I have no problem ripping the Band-Aid off because that Sagittarian vibe just really comes out. It's like, hey, bottom line, no, this is it.
Yeah, you have no problems laying the smack down.
Oh, absolutely. Between that and the Capricorn moon, there's no chance. It could be blunt.
Yeah, get a helmet. I find it interesting because like I said, I'm very similar because I have, the Virgo placements, I have the Libra placements, I have a few Scorpio placements. I do have a bit of Leo in me. I don't have, I would say, I don't have as much water in my chart as I do, maybe some fire and earth. But I'm fairly even. And I think you have a bit of evenness too in your chart.
The one sign that I have the least amount is water. I only have the only water I have is Scorpio, and I have 2 placements in Scorpio.
Yes,
that is Uranus and Venus, and that's it.
Yeah,
everything else is fire, earth, and air.
But that Venus and Scorpio is very prominent. That is something, because this is where I find it interesting when you talk about your chart, because I feel the exact same way. You're right. I don't have a ton of water either, because I have Mars in Scorpio. I have Uranus in Scorpio. So I don't feel like I have the emotion or the expressiveness that I wish I had. Like I know other people can sometimes can just express themselves emotionally. My placements don't really allow for that. But the Mars and Scorpio in me is very much a prominent thing. And that Venus and Scorpio, that's another one because Venus
Mhm.
and Scorpio is intense.
Yeah. I feel like as far as feelings go, what's interesting is like I feel like I can be expressive with my emotions because of all the fire energy, the
Right.
passion, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it usually kind of comes on rather intense.
Yeah.
And then with that Scorpio placement with love, Venus, it's also intense. It's like
Yeah.
usually like all or nothing. And
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yes.
I
It's
guess I,
brewing. I
yeah,
always describe those Scorpio placements, especially Venus and Scorpio, as like when someone has got like their head above water, they could be treading water underneath it. You wouldn't know it, but the face is just like this, and it's like deep thought, a little bit of like not a scowl, but like a little bit of like intensity there. But underneath the surface, it's like totally treading water,
yeah.
because like all the emotions are like, being processed or maybe even fought for that matter.
I imagine like with my Scorpio placements that those Scorpio placements are like when I kind of picture the image of it, I
Hmm.
picture it like this very deep well that goes like almost infinite, you know,
Yes.
and it's just because Scorpio kind of have they'll have that um energy of someone that's very can be kind of cold or
Yeah.
kind of like almost very like what you just described, very
Yeah.
emotionless,
Yeah.
but that's outwardly.
Yeah.
Inwardly,
Not
they
the inside.
oh my gosh, it's such a deep
Hmm.
deep emotion, and
Yeah.
it's very wild that yeah.
Yeah, in my Mars and Scorpio, what it is for me is that I've always described this in my live, sessions with everybody, and that is, I'm very calm, cool, collected. That is genuinely me. What you see is what you get. Nothing really gets to me. But if I cross a line, if my boundaries are being pushed enough, um, happens every decade, maybe, but like that Mars and Scorpio can kick up into high gear where it's like it's done. Like that's it. I will never look back. I will shut that door. And that's an energy where it's like you kind of don't want to mess with. You don't want to go there. I
Right.
don't ever want to go there. But I can if I really have to. And I think that Venus and Scorpio is maybe a little bit of, it's not the aggression, but it can also be an all or nothing, like you said, where you either love hard or you're like, boom, out.
I look at it this way, they always say like love and war. It's kind of like the opposite, like the polar opposite. So
Yeah,
with that Scorpio there too, and as much as we love something, if we're trying to protect or defend it, we
yeah,
can turn vicious with that
100%.
Scorpio
Yeah,
energy. Yeah.
yeah. I guess that's a little bit of that stinger, right?
Yeah. But
Hmm.
it's very interesting. I think like as you were talking about it, I would imagine with your Virgo placements and your Scorpio placements, it's very like pinpoint accuracy. Like if you choose not to act, but if you choose to act, you know exactly go for the jugular and you put it into it.
It's kind of funny you say that. Spontaneous talks, Nick, between us because the wasn't kind of on the agenda, but I'm gonna go there. We are at the new moon in Virgo. Now, obviously, this recording is timeless for everybody, but I just want to make a point because I am a Virgo myself, as you know. Virgos are logical and responsible, and they're analytical, and yeah, they know how to absolutely zone in on something or pinpoint something. I describe myself as really having a knowing. I just know. And that's maybe why I'm successful in regards to my intuition, my abilities. I've had this really my whole life. But that's a very good point, is that I will pick my battles very, very wisely. And so, sometimes people will say, "How did you keep your cool?" We were talking earlier, about working
Mhm.
on social media and how do you handle situations when maybe there's a troll in the group or, somebody comes into the live and says something that may not be so nice because, I mean, you work on social media, it can happen, right? And there was a scenario one time where everyone said, "Oh my gosh, block them, like Kelly," and it was so kind. Everybody came to my defense. It was so lovely. But they were like so shocked that I didn't just, lose it or get angry or just automatically block. I handled it more like a teacher where I'm not going to give it the attention. I'm going to pick my battles. I'm going to show compassion, but that's not weakness. That's
Right.
just me gathering my thoughts before I do something. I've got
Right.
to get to a certain point before I'm going to react. So you're absolutely right. My Virgo tendencies mixed with even that Mars and Scorpio. But again, it's also the Libra diplomacy. I'm very diplomatic. And when I have to give feedback, whether it's to students or in Zoom sessions, I'm always going to come from a place of love and diplomacy. We don't have to hurt anybody with feedback.
Right.
Right? So you make a good point. It is about accuracy for me.
Yeah, I definitely see that, or at least that's what I kind of envision, because I know with like Virgos are heavy in analysis. So it's like you've definitely analyzed that problem, you know, ad nauseum, I guess. And
I
then
was gonna say sometimes too much. Virgo, I mean, every sign overthinks, but if I went through all the different signs, I would tell you the ways in which we do it differently.
yeah, I see that too, though. Like in my interactions with like people of different signs, it's
Mhm.
very interesting to see. Like there's overthinking, but they're overthinking about different things, or
Yes.
in different ways. And I
Yes.
find that very interesting in interacting with people, learning that those little
Yeah.
nuances.
Well,
Yeah.
I would bet that your overthinking actually stems from, like as a Sag, even just as a Sag sun, I would say is probably more about your philosophy and about your spiritual side and wanting to know those facts, but also being a bit stubborn because you all know that Sagittarius, you can't tell them what to do. You cannot, you
Guilty.
know, yeah, you know what I mean? So your overthinking might be the amassing of knowledge. Like one thing that I can identify with as a Sag rising is that when I'm into something, I study it to no end. Like I want to learn as much about it. So I giggled thinking of you studying tarot because I probably did the exact same thing. I'm getting like the original meanings. Not that I started with the Rider Waite. I never started with the Rider Waite. I started with the Wild Unknown. That was my first deck, but which doesn't follow, any of
Right.
the imagery really of Rider Waite. But I was drawn to the art, like the pen and ink of that deck. I loved it. But when I went through the basics, I stay very true in all of my readings to those basic messages, and then I expand from there. I always stay true to the meaning of the cards,
Right.
you know, and I will learn everything about it in order to have that knowledge. That's important to me. So I think that you probably did the exact same thing.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned it, because when you mentioned that, I remember as a kid, like you were just talking about, like when you zone in on something, you kind of
Yeah,
like play zone in. I
yeah.
remember summers, like in between school, just trying to keep busy and learning different things.
Mhm.
I'm dating myself because I had an encyclopedia. This is before
Are we
we
not
like
the same age? Are we not
encyclopedias.
the same
Oh yeah,
age?
we are. But like, look, your youthful appearance on the camera and everything, people may not know that we're the same age. So I'm dating myself. I'm not
He's
necessarily
very fun.
outing you on that one.
I
But
just talked about encyclopedias the other day. I said
yeah,
to someone, I'm like, do you remember the encyclopedia? Yeah, I do, because we had two sets at home and I would sit there and I would look through. Did
yeah,
you?
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what the story's about. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I remember during the summer times. So like, if I got interested in a particular subject or whatnot, like what kid does this? You pull out pretty much the whole set of encyclopedias. You're cross-referencing everything that's in there. Find it as if I were to write a paper on this, but
Yes.
just because of the thirst for knowledge of just wanting to know, like.
Yes.
What was this about? And I did that. Like, I can't tell you how many times I do that. My mom would walk in my room. She's like, "What are you doing?" Like, I had
Yes.
books laid
Yeah.
out everywhere. Just like I was curious about something. So she was
Well,
like happy
I think
about getting it.
I think curiosity is a wonderful thing. The only thing that I would say, and it's interesting that we're talking about some of the things that actually came up in a video that I filmed this morning, actually, before we came to do this today. And Virgo season, the new moon that we're currently at, um, everybody wants to know the who, what, when, where, why, and how, especially in Virgo season because we're so analytical. But this is, again, this is universal talk. This is not about the new moon in Virgo. But as a reference, though, everybody wants to know the details. There's a difference between curiosity and trying to control things. And so that I think is important to distinguish because trying to know the who, what, when, where, why, and how is really trying to control the outcome. And we don't always need to know. And there's a story, I don't know if I ever told this story in a Kelly Talks before, but a few years ago when well, more than a few years ago, pardon me, it feels like yesterday. When I was going through my reawakening before my separation to my ex-husband, I had gone to a friend's wedding. And at that wedding, they had an astrologer that was giving away free mini readings. A very cool, like cocktail party, beautiful, beautiful setting. And there was an astrologer, and I knew that wasn't going to have time to talk to everybody, but I made sure that I was in that lineup because I wanted to talk to him. And you know what happened? He sit down, he looked me right in the eye. He had his computer and my chart because he was doing even like chart readings right there. He looked at me and he said, Kelly, you don't always need to know. And it stuck with me because we always want to know.
Yeah. I think that is something that I struggle with so many Sagittarian placements. I'm just inquisitive by nature. I
Yes.
want to know. I want to know
Yeah.
the how, the what, the who,
Yes.
where, all of that.
Yes.
And it just, I feel like, in a way, I feel like that's kind of like the struggle of I guess the journey
Yes,
is
it is.
like what you're talking about. The universe
Mhm.
just saying, hey, just let things unfold naturally. You're gonna find out the answers.
Trust
But
the
it's
process, Nick. Trust the process, Kelly.
yeah,
Right?
yes, absolutely. But I
Yeah.
think that's hard because it's like, you know, I think it's the fear. Like we talk about this a lot, like the trust, and
Yeah.
I think it's a lot to do with the fear of what happens if it doesn't turn out the way that I expect.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And well, there was a kitty sneeze in the background. I don't know if anybody heard it. It was like confirmation. It was Jimmy's sneeze. Um, it's funny. I'll take it in a slightly different direction, but you've kind of sparked me in a thought that we talked about earlier. And that is in regards to love. Now, I ask you what sparked you, right? We mentioned that a little bit earlier before we got on camera. That I'm going to ask you like what sparked you, and you and I talked about the open door, meaning are we open to love? And one thing before we get to your answer is that I think that this fear that we have of being vulnerable is what is the difficulty in this journey, right? We want to know everything. We want to comfort our fears with facts,
Right.
or facts as we think we know them.
Right.
And I describe it as we need to get a thicker skin. Like we basically need to work through the energies or weather the storm. So that leads me then, like, what is it that sparked you, Nick?
So for me, what sparked me was, well, I'll kind of retell the story a little bit. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Before, uh, let's see. Let me start with the divorce. Okay,
Okay.
so my ex and I separated. We got divorced, and after the divorce, I basically told my friends, I was like, "Look, I'm not doing this again. I don't
Yep.
want to do the marriage thing. If the M word even comes out of my mouth, the standing orders is y'all shoot me on sight. I am done. I'm not doing
Yes.
it."
Yep.
And then I was like that for years. Like, so my divorce was final in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
It's only been since meeting my person and
Mm-hmm.
really after getting sparked, and then the thoughts of I do want a connection, and then maybe I would like to go in the marriage direction. And then I'm sitting here thinking to myself, like, did that just even cross my mind? Like,
Yeah.
what happened? But it's like before, I would have never even given it a second thought. I was just like so anti, like, this is just not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny how when I got sparked, everything changed. And
Yes.
to the degree that that's one thing that I really do want is that deep connection with someone to the point where I'm willing to be vulnerable and to love again, to the point of allowing that, being open to that.
I love that, Nick. That's the story that I would say we all go through. I talk to people all day, every day about the exact same conversation. The bottom line of these stories is always the same. We were going through very difficult times. All of a sudden we get sparked And in my opinion, we get sparked because the universe is trying to wake us up. Our soul's trying to wake us up and get us out of that stagnant energy or those walls that we've put up around us. Because ultimately, we have to grow and we have to change. And it's not about forcing people into a relationship or that people have to be in a relationship. This is not about another person. It's about us. We need to get better. Like I said, we need to weather the storm, get a thicker skin in order to achieve the things that we want.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So I'm curious your take on this.
Mm-hmm.
So in this journey of like learning about self, because it's a journey of self-discovery.
Yes.
What is your take on why do you think it's so difficult for us to learn to love ourselves? Because this does seem to be like a very difficult task that so many of us have with, because we all come together with the same issue of how do we love ourselves? Why do you think it's so difficult? And maybe do you have any tips helping people
Love the question. Yeah, it's a great question. I think because, okay, let's kind of go back to the root of, let's say, spirituality for a moment, where we have like, head or brain and heart coherence, right? We want to be in line. Why do you think they always say the longest journey is from the head to the heart? Because it's very hard to get out of our heads and into our heart space. Because really, essentially, and funny that you're asking, because I said this in the video earlier today too. I said, your body lies to you, your head lies to you, okay? Because it's a programming of traumas, triggers, and hurts from our youth, our previous relationships. It becomes learned behavior. Now, as a teacher, think about it this way, Nick. Children up to around age 6 or 7. So for those people that are watching who are parents or around young children, you know that they're very innocent. I always think of Le Petit Prince. Oh, funny how we're going to go into French literature.
Right.
Where a child can draw you a picture and know exactly what it is. And you as an adult have zero idea. Okay. It looks like a jumble of lines and shapes and whatever, but that kid can tell you a story, right? There's like imagination and there's innocence. But the brain starts to shift around 6 or 7, where they lose that innocence or they lose that imagination because we become programmed to the world. And something that happens in my practice very often is that I can talk to people and an age will just randomly pop up from me. And I'll just say, what happened when you were 8? What happened when you were 4? What happened when you were 14, 15? It's not about, something bad happening necessarily. It could be that, you moved homes, your parents separated or divorced, or somebody passed away, like a grandparent or a very close friend, or maybe somebody bullied you, or I don't know. It could be anything. And those times in our life alter the way our brain thinks. We blame ourselves for things. We take responsibility for things that really aren't our responsibility. I mean, how many children do you know blame themselves for their parents' divorce when really it has nothing to do with the child? These are not things that should be privy to children. They should not be involved in those conversations, because as a teacher, especially a high school teacher, when students would come to school, they would share these things. They knew exactly what was going on. They know a lot more than we think they do. They're like sponges, right? So not to give you such a long answer, it's that we learn these behaviors through instances that happen in our lives. We watch our parents' relationships. We watch other people and we learn. We watch TV and movies and social media and we gain this, insight that we think is the way things are. We get into relationships and we get hurt. And, it all depends on our perspective of change or what we learn from those things. But you've heard me say this a million times online, and that is we become these overgivers, overdoers, and problem solvers. We placate to our family. We lack boundaries. At times we're shown that we have to overgive in order to be loved. Just look at, the holidays when the commercials start coming on, or Valentine's Day. Buy this jewelry so that they love you. Buy them this so that they love you, and we're looking for love kind of in the wrong places. And so when we become these overgivers, and let's say people don't reciprocate in the same way, what's the truth? We have an expectation, even if we don't know we do.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden we're disappointed.
Right.
And we take it and internalize it and say, but I did this for you. Why didn't you do this for me? You don't love me. And interestingly enough, that I mentioned Linda, my mentor from when I first was, I call it reawakened or sparked. When she said, don't book the honeymoon suite. Yeah, that was triggering, but it was so accurate because what was I doing? I had an expectation, and not to speak for you, Nick, but I'm going to bet you that in the situation of you being sparked, you probably did the same thing. I would bet everybody watching this did the exact same thing. I didn't mean to have the venue booked, the band booked, the flowers booked, the honeymoon suite booked, the life all planned out in my brain. It's a beautiful thought. Of course, those are the things we'd like, but what we're doing is putting the cart before the horse.
Trying to control the process.
100%. So when I get to the cake analogy, that's why I always come back to the fact that, we're trying to pull people up the cake or to do the things that we want them to do because it really validates us more than anything, right? It doesn't really serve the other person, it serves us.
Right.
And when it's not reciprocated, we're mad, we're resentful, and we're angry at the world or at the universe and say like, well, why me? Why is this happening? It's like the universe gives you a little bit of a dangle, of that carrot and says, oh yeah, you like it so much, now go get it. So what way do you get it? By self-love. Self-love is being kind to yourself. It's doing the things that you would do for other people, but for yourself, saying nice things about yourself, doing nice things for yourself, taking care of your body, what you put in your body. It's making boundaries. I love you, but I love myself more. So the tips are always, don't be afraid to do something nice for yourself. Don't be afraid to let somebody do something nice for you, whether that's buy a coffee or buy you lunch or carry something for you. It doesn't mean you're helpless or that like you're in desperate need of help from people. It just means that somebody wants to do something nice for you. And we can't always question why people want to be nice to us. If we're always wondering, like, why does somebody want to do something for me? Then I don't know, it's kind of predictive programming. It's like we're just going to set ourselves up to be hurt. Why not allow people to show you who they are, whether that's good or not so good, right? Good people do bad things, bad people do good things. How do you know? So I guess that's how I look at it. Like being good to ourselves is actually knowing also how to say no. No, you're not going to breadcrumb me for the millionth time. No, you're not ready. I have to listen to you and I've got to put myself first.
Right.
So long answer, sorry.
No,
But
good,
it's
good information too, because, I, the reason why I asked the last part about like, how do you show how do you show love to
yeah,
yourself is because, we kind of talked about this off camera a little earlier.
yeah.
I've changed careers and I went from doing like automotive work, over the past almost 20 years now into an area of more like mental health and we touch on the ideas of self-care. But
Yes.
it's so fascinating that when you talk to people about self-care, one of the first and most automatic things are, well, I take a shower, I'm eating, and things, which are all great things. But a lot of what I feel like they leave out are some of the things that you just talked about, or the more important things of like, what are you doing for your mental health? Like,
Yes.
or how are you doing things that you enjoy doing, taking care of those other aspects of self besides just the physical.
Right. It's true. I think that the line, I love you, but I love myself more is really important because ultimately by human nature, and I mentioned this in a previous video that, people really have a hard time understanding the human condition. It's something so simple yet so complicated. The human condition says that regardless of your race, your gender, your class, we all go through the same process. We go through the maturation process. We all grieve. We all make mistakes. Humans are naturally selfish. Isn't it funny by nature that in survival, if it comes down to you or me, it's going to be me, Nick. And in your case, it's going to be you, right? So
Right.
we inherently are selfish, Yet, for some reason, we're molded to be out of what our natural energy should be. It's not bad if you want to take a nap. It's not bad if you want to say no to something. It's just that people, for whatever reason, are taught that there's a shame in taking care of yourself. I mean, look at how much mom shaming there is out there sometimes. Judgment of like, well, you have to be 24/7 a mom. Well, no, I was a person before I was a mother. I used to tell my students, whenever they would complain about their parents, I would say things like, you realize that your parents were people before they had you. You know what I mean? Like, Nick, you weren't always dad.
Right.
You were Nick. You were your own
Right.
person going through your own experiences. Um, that's just life. So I think that we have to recognize that we are who we are. We're allowed to say no. We're allowed to live our lives. It's our mind, our body, our souls. And nobody really has the right to dictate what you do. And that's why boundaries, if you were to ask me what I think the number one way to show yourself love, it's boundaries. You know, do you remember the story? I've mentioned the story before actually on live, where when I was a teacher, considering that you used to be a teacher, think about this example. And this can be true for working in social media. And that is when I was a teacher, I had a student that said in front of the class, very nice young man. This was not a nasty comment by any means on his part. I know where it came from. He said, well, miss, if I have an issue with my essay and I message you or email you at 10 o'clock at night, you should answer my email and help me with my essay. And my response was, well, if I can help you and I want to do so in the moment, yeah, maybe I will. There's nothing saying that maybe, I don't, I wouldn't be, cutthroat and cold and say no. At the same time, I have the right to live my life outside of the classroom, just like they do. I wouldn't be messaging them. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't message at 10 o'clock and I'd say, where's your assignment? I would wait until I see them the next morning when they come into class. And it was a bit of a controversial talk in the classroom that day because in his mind, I should be accessible to him 24/7. And it doesn't work that way. I don't have to be.
Yeah, the Sagittarian in me to that specific scenario would be like, I'm sorry, sir, those benefits are not included with your level of subscription service.
Yes, it's true. And, it's not saying that I would not want to.
Right.
It's just saying that, like, I don't know why there's an expectation that I would have to,
Exactly.
and I think that people sometimes have to remember where the boundaries are. And, you and I also spoke about this. This can apply to dating. This can apply to work life. This can apply to anything. If somebody expresses a no, it means no.
Right.
People love to push those boundaries. It's like saying, okay, somebody's really attracted to someone or they'd like to get to know them. And they say, I really like you. I have feelings for you. If somebody responds with, hey, listen, I'm really flattered and thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm not available, or, whatever the valid answer is, that's their response. And there's a respect level. If I can't reply to your email after work hours, respect the fact that that's the boundary. And we can't always expect an instant gratification or everything to go our way. And like I said to you, and everybody knows this about me, when my boundaries push like that, I go completely the opposite direction. I will not engage,
Yeah. I've
especially if I've expressed it, especially if I've said clearly it's a no.
you know what you say actually reminds me of a little story, kind of like
Mhm.
where I did the same almost, where there was some guy that was like panhandling on the side of the road, but it
Mhm.
was for like a charity event or something
Yes.
like that.
Yeah.
So I roll down my window and I'm going ahead to get money out of my wallet to give to
Mhm.
the event. And then he's like, why don't you reach for that 20 that you have in your wallet? And it was just kind of bold. And I'm like, that's not what I feel called to give. I was like, I've got this or nothing, you
Yeah.
know? And it kind of like in that
Yeah.
same token, almost like really like doubling down, going in the opposite direction. This is setting that boundary. No, this is all I've got to, you don't know what the rest of that money is allocated for. And I mean, I feel called to give. Why not just accept the donation for what you're
Yes.
asking for? So,
Yeah. So I think that really what it comes down to is boundaries, I think, are the number one topic really of my day in some capacity. There's a boundary issue somewhere, whether that's a work boundary, a family boundary, a relationship boundary, because we allow the behavior. So, people get angry because, somebody will do something to push or to, cross those boundaries, but then the reality is that we allow it.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're allowing it, we're not being very kind to ourselves. We're just putting ourselves through a process of hurt, of even punishment in a way.
Can you remember the first boundary that you created, or the first time you knew that you needed to create one?
Uh, yeah. Um, oh, Nick, interesting. Uh, the first major one that I can think of, I mean, granted, when we're children or when we're teenagers, there's always going to be little things. I think we don't always find our voice until a little bit later. And as a shy Virgo, I know people will never see the side of me. They'll be like, "You're shy? You're not shy." I have a shy side to me. I describe myself as an ambivert, meaning I can be extroverted, but I'm also a Virgo, which is a hermit, which means I can easily stay home. I can have an exit plan when I'm going somewhere and be like, "I'm out of here. I got to go home." It's nothing personal to anybody, but it's like my zen or my quiet time. I need that in a way. Um, it was around the time of being maybe 21. Funny that we're talking about this. I believe you can be sparked multiple times in your life. It's not just the twin flame journey. That's why I get away from the label, because I had this experience already when I was in my early 20s, started when I was 19. And it was that I met somebody on the very first day of university. It's one of those days where you get to know people, you go play people bingo and you meet someone.
Mm-hmm.
And I met somebody that day where I was like, that's it. I was convinced of how I felt about this person, and we had an amazing connection. And I, at that age, already went through the stages of hot and cold, hot and cold, hot and cold. I knew how much they cared about me, no doubt about it. But by my third year, funny again, repeating myself, I was doing my French. I actually switched my French degree to my English degree in my third year for a reason. I had slightly higher marks in English, and it would help me accomplish leaving university 1 year earlier to do a 3-year bachelor instead of a 4. Now I made up that fourth year in my first year of teaching. So I'm definitely a studier and a learner. So I made up that year. But it was because of this relationship that I wanted to get out sooner. I had to make a boundary. And I'll tell you the very quick, funny story about how that went down, how that boundary went down. This person, a Leo, funny, with a Virgo moon, because sun moon conjunction. I'm a Virgo sun. They had a Virgo moon. Anyways, deep connection, was in my classes. It was torture for anybody who's been through this. Going to class every day with a person who you have a deep connection with and is breadcrumbing, hot and cold, and avoidant. And I made the decision that I was going to get out of there a year early and make my move somewhere else, go to teachers college. And I had to go to this person's home basically to like say goodbye. Here's Kelly. Kelly gets out of the car, goes into the house. Said person basically says to me, "Kelly, I'm not the person you think I am. I don't know why you love me so much." The projection, the pushing away, right?
Mm-hmm.
"I don't know why you love me so much. It's not what you think it is." And I said, "Oh yeah, okay. I'm just imagining all this that we've been through in the past like 3 years of school." Okay, I said, "Number one, do you deserve my time? No. Do you deserve my love? No. Do you deserve my friendship? No." I said, "What you deserve is a swift kick in the ass. When I walk out that door, I will be gone. And I hope that I'm just way too damn happy to care about you." And that was where Kelly, it's kind of like where Stella, Stella gets her groove back or got her groove back. This was where Kelly all of a sudden like found herself, because from that moment on, I walked out that door. I didn't contact, I didn't do anything to chase that connection. And that's actually where I moved. I met my ex-husband. I met him working. I worked in a bank, and we met each other. And a year later, what do you think happened? That person, that Leo, we swapped roles. He came back in my life. Hey, I don't know if you want to hear from me. It was him now chasing me. And I gained the control, meaning, not that it's a game, but I gained the control because at that point, I got to decide whether I wanted it or didn't want it.
Right.
And needless to say, I ended up marrying my ex-husband because he was what I needed at the time. Now,
Right.
I did years later have, more insight into the way things played out. But my point was that boundary was so empowering because the moment I said, that's it, I'm done, I hit that point, my life changed. And you and I talked about that earlier in regards to like, what was that moment for you, Nick?
Oh, um, wow. I asked the question, but then I guess I wasn't so prepared for it to be
Yeah,
boomerang
that's
back.
okay. That's
So
okay.
let's see. I guess for me, the first time I had to do this hard boundary, I'll say this. When I got divorced, I was a bit naive. I was thinking that we can do this as more of like an amicable
Yes.
divorce.
Okay.
Uh, my person didn't share those same views.
Mhm.
My ex decided that she was going to come after me for like vindictively
Yeah.
or things like it. It was
Unfortunately, that
very,
happens. I talked to a lot of people in that situation. I'm sorry you went through that.
yeah, I appreciate, thank you. Yeah, but it was like all of her insecurities and everything is what got projected onto me. And I'm sitting here like, hey, it takes two of us to tango. Was I
100%.
the best spouse possible during our marriage? No, I acknowledge that I have some faults and some onus on that. But was I completely horrible and am I the villain of your story? I don't think that I should be. I feel
Mhm.
like we both had things that we had to work on. And eventually, I guess for me, I did work on, on her side, she remarried, but it took a long time for her to even stop kind of coming after me for things like just money and unreasonable requests. And I'm like sitting here like, you and I lived together. You knew what my finances were before. Why are you asking for things that I couldn't even give you in our marriage? Why are you asking for above and beyond
Mhm.
that afterwards? You know
Mhm.
what I mean? And it's
Mhm.
like, there's that. So part of that, and I really feel like she has that narcissistic personality. So it was really like that firm boundary of now I only talk to you when it involves our daughter, and I don't talk to you about anything else outside of that. And standing firm on that boundary for me was the first time that I realized that I needed one,
Yeah.
because before I didn't even, honestly, I didn't even know. And really, I feel like I did create without knowing that. And I didn't know until much later, seeing you and like really learning about the journey that hey, maybe I should have done a lot more of these. Maybe this is it opened my eyes to like what boundaries were and why they were necessary. So
It's very true. And I appreciate you sharing that, because what I do find fascinating about that story and the one that I told is that even though mine may have been at around, let's say 21, 22, and yours maybe when you were just divorcing, if you really were to take yourself forward to where you're really sparked and you're in another situation where you do need a balance, you start to realize how that energy of that past boundary really was important to your growth, and how when you have to go through it again, it just reiterates that and improves even further. Because I experienced that situation without even really knowing about what you would call the twin flame journey or the spiritual side of it. I just thought that I was going through a scenario of just whatever, I didn't really have the awareness of that per se. And then when I went through it again, I realized that that boundary was absolutely necessary for me to find my voice or to find myself again, because we lose ourselves. We lose ourselves in these relationships. We're trying to please everybody. We're trying to placate to our family, our friends, our job. And then we start going, I do this, and this, and who cares about me? And it's not that nobody cares about us. It's that we start to feel so like over it, that you have to hit that low. Like, Nick, you had to be pushed to that point to recognize, like, I cannot do this anymore.
Yeah, you're
Or
absolutely right. That
yeah,
like
I have to show up at the house and be like, that's it. I'm out of here. Like, bye-bye.
for like my marriage, the way I describe it is, I guess when we finally got to the point where we were divorcing, I'm a more of the roll with the punches kind of person.
Me too.
Like with my spouse, I was like, look, I don't really care about the small details of like where we're gonna go have dinner or whatnot. I
Yeah.
just want you to have a good time. I can find whatever on the menu I like, you know. So like one of the biggest things was finding a place to eat. So
Yes.
this is I remember this all the time. I'd ask my ex, hey, where do you want to go eat? I don't know, you pick. So I give her three options. And she's like, I don't want this one, I don't want that one, I don't want this one. I was like, well, obviously you have a place in mind. Why don't we start with your idea of where do you want to eat? And I'll let you know if, hey, I'm fine. I said, chances are I can find something on the menu. And she's like, I don't know why you always make me pick. And I'm like, I gave you three options. It's like,
No, Nick, you're so interesting to me, because I don't know how you know that I've just literally had these conversations in my day to day, like outside of social media, because I don't mean to make it about gender. And this is why I love also speaking to men, in my sessions or these talks, because um here's the thing about men. A lot of people want men to take the lead, and I understand that. Like, they want you to plan the dinner, they want you to say this is where we're going, and I don't mean like telling you people what to do or to be submissive to whatever. It's just a matter of like, here, tell us where we're going and I'll go. But what's interesting about men is that they really are very simple. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. They're very simple. They don't really care where you want to eat. They want to please you. They want you to make a decision. Just be decisive about what you want. And I had this come up this past week where it's like, look, I don't care what's in the fridge. I like everything that's in the fridge or the freezer. Just pick one of them,
right,
and that doesn't mean that, like, I have to make it. It's not even a matter of like, it's on me to make it. It's just pick whatever it is, and that's what we're going to make, and that's what we're going to have. And so I think that sometimes people confuse these masculine and feminine energies, because it's the ability to make a decision. Now, I'm going to take it back to the alchemist, about, and again, I hate to use gender. Men don't stop for love. Women do. So in other words, if a man has a goal, they're going to go towards that goal. It's amazing how for whatever reason they can put up that boundary very easily about their capacity. I always say we have to take a page out of that book. But women will stop and analyze and be like, but I love you, but I want this, but I want it. Or if it's about dinner, it's like, I can't make a decision. Making the decision actually makes for a more powerful connection, because nobody wants to argue about this, that, whatever. It's just a matter of, what are we doing?
right,
This is what you want. Good. Tell me what you want. I don't want to decipher what you want. I don't want to. It's a matter of just like, say what it is.
right. I think it's just about, being comfortable in having that clear communication with someone.
Yes.
Like why should someone have to guess what you want if you have something that you obviously have an idea. Like I kind of
Yeah.
take this back to the dinner thing. You
Yeah.
obviously have an idea of what you don't
Yes.
want to eat. So
Yes.
and then perhaps something that you might be inclined to eat. Why should I have to play 20 questions and guess
Yeah.
whenever you can't just simply tell me? Because I'm, I've already expressed I really don't have a preference. I can,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
and I feel like it was a lot of that in our marriage, and that's what I say usually kind of towards the end. It's like I compromised myself out of the marriage because
Yes.
at a certain point I started with the idea of I was doing it out of trying to keep the peace and the love like, and the
Yes.
communication flowing. But
Yes.
it got to a point where my person or my ex at the time, like didn't care what I felt or what I wanted at a certain point, because I've always played the role of I don't really care. I'm just doing
Hmm.
it to please you. And it's that overgiving that you talked about.
Yeah.
I
We
overgave
lose
myself
ourselves.
out of the relationship.
Not to take it back to what I just said about sort of like the goals. Your goal, and I know this is gonna sound cheesy, your goal was simply just let's eat.
Hmm.
You were ambitious. I know that's the most basic of thing. Your goal, your ambition was just to make a decision and eat. It
Right.
didn't have to be complicated. You weren't stopping to like worry about the who, what, when, where, why, and how.
Right.
All you were ambitious to do was to reach that goal,
Goal. Yeah. Exactly what you
even if it's just to eat. Whereas the way she looked at it was like, well, what about this? What about that? I don't want this. I don't want that. And it was like, it stopped the whole process. Not making a decision is making a decision. So by not even making a decision about food, you're stifling the progress of getting to the goal, which is ultimately to eat.
right.
Now take that onto a bigger scale of the spiritual journey, and you can see how that's applied. We get in the way of our own goals because all we're trying to do is worry about the who, what, when, where, why, and how, instead of simply just saying, let me just try this. I want to eat this. Okay, either you like it, or you don't. Big deal. You move on to the next meal,
Yeah.
right? I
Absolutely.
mean, I could talk to you for hours, Nick.
Oh yeah. Sure.
To tie it up, I mean, like, who shuffles your cards, Nick?
Interesting. So I think we've talked about. I have two answers for that.
Okay.
So the first answer is like more along the lines of the love aspect, right?
Mhm.
So who shuffles my cards? Obviously, I have a person that's very dear and near to me, uh,
Mhm.
someone that I met on this journey that I am incredibly thankful for, because before, like in the life after my divorce, I could not even fathom connecting with somebody at such a deep level anymore.
Right.
I felt like the relationship that I went through with my marriage was really toxic. And honestly, I was at a place where I did not want to be vulnerable, to share bits of myself that could later on be weaponized and
Mhm.
used against me, which I feel like had happened.
Right.
But then I met this person that just connected with me on such an effortless level.
Mhm.
Conversation was just incredibly fluid.
Mhm.
I it's like it's very funny because I think about it as like I never really thought about this before, but I
Mhm.
feel like I identify, I guess, as like sapiosexual, where you fall in love with the mind
Yes.
of the person.
Yes. Yep.
And that really is what kind of sealed the deal for me. Like, in order for you to have the whole parts of me, you first have to win me here, and
Yep.
then I will, then I'll give the rest of to you.
Mhm. Mhm.
But that's one thing that I just remember is like in our interactions, the curiosity. Just how does your mind work? And it's very interesting because we come from two different backgrounds.
Yes.
He and I come from more of like an education background, and he is more of like a street smarts person. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's just, but still so intelligent, the things that he comes up with, and as much time and energy. Like, he's got a wide range of subjects that he's interested in, and he'll just pull up a random topic and just start going off on all this stuff. And you can
Mhm.
tell classic Virgo because he's done all the research in the whole
Yeah.
part
Yes.
here, and I'm like, I, like it's mind blowing, and it's just like I can talk to him like I can talk to you for hours, and it's
Yes.
just that. And then I guess the other part is who shuffles my cards. So as someone who's, I consider myself a little intuitive, like doing this
Mhm.
we
Mhm.
as we go
Mhm.
along. There are a few people that I would allow, like readers that I feel like I connect with on a basis of just watching them, their integrity, their
Mhm.
authenticity. You being
Mhm.
like, actually, I think you were the first person to read for like my first professional tarot reading. I
Thank you.
believe
I'm
that
honored. I'm always honored with that scenario.
yeah, I think you were actually my very first professional tarot read. So,
Mhm.
and I tell you what, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Um, when I got the information from that reading, I was just like, it confirms a lot of what I've already felt
Yeah.
with my intuition.
Yeah.
So I was
I appreciate
greatly,
that. Well, and that's the key in regards to our energy and our journey. It's about investing in the right scenarios that can help us. There's a lot of stuff out there. It's like information. There's so much information out there. It doesn't mean that all the information is good for us. We
right,
have to trust ourselves to learn through the journey and through people who have been through those experiences. I always say, I would never tell you something I don't already know. I wouldn't tell you something that I haven't been through.
right.
I received an interesting comment the other day on Instagram from somebody that I did a reading 2 years ago with. And forgive me, it's not verbatim, but it's along these lines. He said, "Hi Kelly, you did a reading with me 2 years ago. You did say things that I didn't want to hear, but you told me everything that was going to happen."
Yeah.
And I do remember this person. I think people sometimes think that you won't remember. I have a very good memory for such things. Usually, like even if I don't initially, we start talking, and then I'll be like, yes, because I do
Mhm.
talk to thousands of people. But for the most part, I can remember those scenarios. And I do remember that reading I did with him. And I would say that somebody who really is giving you a good reading will tell you things that you need to hear versus the things you want to hear.
Absolutely. I do that with the few customers that I've worked with too.
Yeah.
Recently, I had one that kind of told me the same thing. He's like, "Look," he said, "number one, I don't know how you knew what you knew." He said,
Mm-hmm.
"The accuracy was pretty cool." He said, "But you told me things like, look, you're gonna go through this period that you don't want to go through. You've
Yeah.
got this hard road ahead." He's like, and it's every bit of that. He said everything that you said was kind of playing out. He's like, I
Yeah.
appreciate, in that you didn't just tell me what I wanted to hear, but kind
Yeah.
of told me what I needed to know. And it was nice to kind of get that kind of feedback.
It is. It is because to me, that's what I know it's gonna sound cheesy, but I feel like that's what love is, and that's what care is. Like when I was in the classroom, I had to give feedback every single day. It's not easy because people, just like an online live, you don't know what people are walking in with every day.
Mhm.
You don't know what hurts they have. You don't know how their day went. You don't know what, they're sad about or disappointed in, or who knows what it is. And so when you're giving feedback, you have to be mindful and diplomatic about the scenario. But I also know from a teaching perspective that telling students that they're all A plus and superstars does not lead to a well-rounded, healthy student. So
No.
it's the same type of thing. And this with mental health and teaching in your own experience, is that unfortunately there are people out there that will say whatever someone wants to hear and give, grades, here, A plus for you, A plus for you, A plus for you, A plus for you. Like those type of scenarios do not bring a long-term gain. That's a short-term gain with a long-term pain, as I always say. I would rather have a short-term pain and a long-term gain. And I mean, that's just me. I would think that most people would agree with that, but in the moment, it takes a lot of strength to take the short-term pain option.
Right. I
We
think
don't
that
want,
that's very
yeah,
interesting that you put it like that too. Yeah, because as a former teacher, I think the same thing. I think it's more realistic. We've been in the real world. So
yes,
as our students were coming up to us, it's our job to prepare them for that real world.
yeah,
If all we do is say, "Hey, A plus for you," and then they go to their first job and they're like, no, you actually got to see on your performance, or like you
yeah,
really on the verge of getting fired. Well, I don't understand this. I was an A plus student all my
yeah,
school year, but it
yes,
didn't really prepare them for anything. You know what I
no,
mean?
yeah,
And so it's definitely creating that realistic aspect of these are the expectations, and that the reality of it is that you do have your A students, you have your B students, you have your C students, your D
hmm,
students, your F students. It's what you do to apply yourself, and for some, it's the challenges that you face with learning and how you overcome them. So,
But you know what I find really interesting in today's society, and this is applied to, our youth, and this is also applied to adults,
mhm.
and that is people feel like they have to be A plus in everything that they do. And if that they're not, there's something wrong. And this really boils my blood because not everyone is going to have the same strengths. You can't tell me that every French student, as an example, is an amazing French student,
Right.
but they may be an amazing math student,
Right.
amazing science student, arts student, English class could be their strength. I mean, I used to see this actually in, speaking of history, because I know you love history. I taught, grade 12 English, which is like right on the brink of, let's say, going to college, university. And I would get students that say to me, but miss, I do amazing on my history essays. Why is this one not as good? I should be getting an A. And there's a very good answer for that. History is about facts. English class is about justifying your responses and how you communicate the responses. So a history paper and an English paper are completely different,
Right.
right? So we have to remember that as human beings, regardless of age, you're going to have strengths and you're going to have weaknesses. But now there's this extreme pressure on our youth to be perfect. And that's why we have such a rise in depression, anxiety. We're pushing kids to learn more, pressure, overscheduled, overstimulated. And then we see this crash that can come for that. And as adults, we talked about the shaming or about the overgiving. We're told that we've got to be everything to everyone. And then boom, we get that tower moment. And we're wondering why we're in that tower moment or why we're sparked.
Right.
That person comes in to change your life, to wake you up, they give you that understanding. Your person understands you, Nick, because you need that understanding from yourself.
Yeah. I agree. It's like, as you're talking about it, it's that whole too much of a cookie cutter mindset,
Yeah.
and it waters. I don't know if I'm saying this right. Our authenticity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's that.
Or our uniqueness, what makes us special or unique. Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, not all of us, like you said, are cut out to have all the same interest and strengths. But how boring would that be if that's all, if all we were just the same clone? Like the cloned
Yeah.
into.
Yeah.
You know?
I think the education system is definitely in a way a metaphor for life. It's the school of life where, we've got to learn our lessons. And as adults, for whatever reason, it's almost like we leave school and we forget that we have to continue to grow and to change. And that's why I always say you can put walls around you. It's not going to help you. Like you said earlier, oh my gosh, don't say marriage to me. Don't say that at all. I don't want any part of it. I don't want to love. I don't want to do this. But it's about having a thick skin to get through the storm so that you can achieve better. It does exist out there,
So
but
that we
a lot
can
of it is perspective and your belief system in yourself and others,
Yeah.
you know?
We have to leave the comfort zone so that way we can grow a little.
The comfort zone's not so comfortable. That's the
Right.
problem. As I
Right.
always say, why would we want to leave it if it's so comfortable? We complain, but we got to actually make the moves. So
Yeah.
Nick, thank you so much for being with me. Like I said, we could talk for hours. I'm sure we could do a million Kelly talks together. It's such a pleasure. You really
Absolutely.
are a bright light when I see you in the lives or in the full moon Zoom or just even in our chats. Like you really are special. And I know you help a lot of people. So thank you so much for being with me.
Oh, thank you very much. I have a great and wonderful teacher. You are still a, somebody that I look up highly to, and
Thank you.
grateful for our connection, for finding you, and for continuing our, you know,
Well,
sure.
I look forward to many more talks, Nick. Thank you so much. If any of you
Absolutely.
would like me to talk about any of the topics that we kind of explored here or a new topic that we didn't discuss, please let me know in the comments. As always, thank you for your kindness. I would really appreciate a like, a comment, a subscribe. It really helps me with the algorithm and getting this video out to more people. So thank you very much. Thank you, Nick. And I wish you all a wonderful day.